If you thought the lore of Elden Ring was confusing, then you are not ready for what Nightreign has in store, because even at a surface level, this game expects us to understand alternate universes, generational curses, and even some elements of time travel. But as it turns out, most of this lore can be understood through the 8 Nightlords, who all act as the game's main bosses. So to prepare for the DLC and better understand the world-ending threats of the night, here is the lore of the main bosses of Elden Ring Nightreign. Let's start with the Shape of Night. Much like the original Elden Ring, Nightreign's intro includes a retelling of a war called the Shattering. But while the version of the story that we're familiar with ends with a stalemate between demigods, this new version of the Shattering ends with order itself being destroyed, drawing forth an abomination known as the Primordial Nightlord. This rise of the Nightlord preceded the onset of an endless night, along with a constant downpour of a blue caustic rain, eating away at its victims' bodies and minds alike. This all implies that Nightreign takes place in a separate timeline from the original Elden Ring, a timeline where the only hope left for this world is for someone to somehow end the night by eliminating its source. And that's where you come in. The Nightfarers are the game's 8 playable characters, soon to be 10, 7 of which were chosen by the mysterious Round Table Hold for their potential ability to fight against the night. The 8th Nightfarer, however, is instead here due to the details of her birth, leaving her forever connected to the same disaster that took her mother's life. This is the Round Table's priestess, who is able to catch glimpses of the forms and locations of each Nightlord, but before the priestess can track down the Primordial Nightlord, the Round Table must first gather traces of night from the other bosses to reveal the true qualities of the Shape of Night. These traces don't need to be gathered in any specific order, and since we recently beat the original Elden Ring while playing as Libra, I feel like it's only fair that it gets the honor of being the first of the bosses to be explained here. Before meeting it in battle, the name we're given for this boss is the Equilibrious Beast. This, along with its description as a goat-headed being who pretends to be a man, both point toward Libra's real-world inspiration. An illustration by the occultist author Eliphas Levi, depicting a demon he called Baphomet. It really doesn't get much more equilibrious than this. The illustration shows something part man and part animal, which basks in the light of day yet remains partially shrouded in night, and it even keeps one arm raised while the other arm stays down by its side. The expedition also brings attention to the form of alchemy that can cause the loss of sanity, calling back to how the alchemical terms solve, meaning to dissolve, and coagula, meaning to coagulate, are written on the demon's arms. But how does this theme of balance translate to the actual boss fight? Well, if you've ever encountered the scale-bearing merchant on one of your runs, you should recognize the form Libra takes here in the arena. Just like the deals that this merchant can offer back in Limveld, each deal here comes at a steep price, like how a wish for greater intellect will also massively cut down your physical abilities. This is before even considering the boss's actual attacks, which utilize both the madness of the chaotic outer god known as the Frenzied Flame and the holy damage typically inflicted by those aligned with the greater will. There's no question as to how this master alchemist was able to hold the title of Nightlord with his control over opposing forces, but what would it look like if a creature was more uniformly aligned with the darkness of the night? Enter Gladius, a 3-headed wolf who learned early on that the world is divided into predators and prey, which honestly isn't a bad way of thinking about the internet either. Most people have no idea how often they're being hunted online. Every time you connect to a public Wi-Fi, hotels, airports, coffee shops, there's a very real chance that someone's sitting between you and the network you're trying to access, quietly harvesting your login credentials and payment information. This is called a man-in-the-middle attack, and it's way more common than people think. That's why this video is sponsored by NordVPN. NordVPN encrypts your entire internet connection with a single click, making that kind of interception pretty much impossible. What really sets them apart though is Threat Protection Pro. This feature actively blocks phishing sites, malware hosting pages, and even detects fake online shops before you accidentally drop your credit card info directly into a scammer's inventory. It's independently certified by AV Comparatives, making NordVPN the only VPN NordVPN to receive their official anti-phishing certification. They've also got Dark Web Monitor, which continuously scans hacker forums and underground markets to check if your credentials have been leaked. When they find something, you get alerted immediately, so you can change your passwords before someone else makes their way into your accounts. If you travel and you want access to your usual content libraries, NordVPN lets you virtually stay at home with over 7,000 servers across 118 countries. Head over to nordvpn.com/amazingchess to get an exclusive deal plus 4 months extra. That's nordvpn.com/amazingchess, and it is completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Check out the link down in the description, and thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. When it comes to Gladius, we're told that the wolf pup, born with its 3 heads, was feared by its peers and driven out of the pack, but its will to live was strong indeed. Given its anatomy, Gladius is almost certainly based on the Cerberus, the canine guardian of the underworld, and while Cerberus pledged its service to Hades, Gladius here is loyal to the primordial Nightlord. During what the game calls a rain-swept night, Gladius seized an unnamed man's sword, but instead of seeking to harm the wolf, the man took the wolf into his arms. Gladius has remained at his side ever since, always carrying that same sword. This boss is now so closely tied to the night that in the game's opening hours, the priestess mistakenly believes it to be the source of the night itself. Of course, defeating Gladius still only rewards 1 trace of night, but as the single most loyal Nightlord and the only boss who shares the same holy weakness as the shape of night, it's no wonder why the Nightfarers would mistake this as their ultimate enemy. Now let's take a look at a boss that seems to have allied with the night out of necessity rather than loyalty. Adel, Baron of the Night, was once the apex predator of an old island, being described as nothing less than a wonder of the natural world. It's also described as a majestic dragon, which lines up well with its name being derived from an old High German word that denotes nobility. After the endless night fell upon its island, the natural order was destroyed, leaving nothing left for the Baron to feed upon. Overtaken with hunger, Adel was driven to madness. One classic myth that could be the inspiration for this Nightlord is the tale of Erysichthon of Thessaly. The story holds that a king disrespected the goddess Demeter by cutting down the trees of her grove. Upon learning what happened, Demeter cursed the king with an endless hunger, leading to him devouring all of the possessions he owned until eventually he consumed his own flesh, leaving nothing behind. If this was the inspiration for Adel, it makes sense why so many of this boss's attacks are based around biting and trying to consume the Nightfarers. With no other options for food, we as the players are effectively its only hope of satisfying its hunger, even if just for a moment. Next up, we have Gnoster, Wisdom of Night. This Nightlord is unique in that it's the only boss that's made up of more than 1 creature, assuming you don't count Gladius. The white flying moth turns out to be Gnoster itself, while the land-bound scorpion goes by the name of Fortis Stoneshield. After the onset of night, the forest that these insects lived in was hit with a blessing of water, leading to a great exodus of the forest creatures, including Gnoster and Fortis. With real-life moths being drawn to light and scorpions naturally thriving in harsh conditions, these bugs symbolize both the pursuit of knowledge and the ability to overcome hardship. Having fled their home, Gnoster and Fortis find themselves allied with the Nightlord. As for real-life inspirations, the parallel to Noah's Ark are hard to ignore. The blessing of water mirrors the Great Flood, an exodus occurs where creatures flee their homes, and 2 unlikely animals find themselves traveling together as a pair, echoing the 2x2 pairings that boarded the Ark. However, if you prefer Greek and Roman mythology, then the next Nightlord has you covered. Caligo, Miasma of Night, is most likely based on the Roman goddess of the same name. This goddess is associated with the very beginnings of creation, and in some versions of the story, she's responsible for the birth of a number of primordial gods, including the ones that govern day, night, darkness, and chaos. In Nightreign, the name Caligo is instead given to a prehistoric dragon who weaponizes freezing mist much like Borealis did in Elden Ring. The eyes of this dragon are said to appear at history's greatest junctures, so her interest was quickly caught by the onset of night. From the phantasmal peak upon which she hid herself, she peered down into the world, committing to memory what she perceived. Then, her eye drawn to a certain cataclysm, from out of hiding she leapt with wings unfurled. Just in case you never noticed this yourself, that eye mentioned in this description can actually be seen in literal physical form in the skybox of Caligo's arena. So if you ever think you got away with whiffing that ult, just know that Caligo saw it every single time.
Alright, Chest, it was one time, okay? I panicked and she's really hard to hit, so what do you want from me?
I want you to get better at Nightreign. Are you here though? Can you take the next one for me?
The title of the weirdest boss in Nightreign really can't go to anyone except for Maris, Fathom of Night, an unknown entity that drifts through the skies. It makes an ocean of its surroundings that it may blend with whatever life is found, as if in a dream. Instead of looking to real-life mythology for this creature, let's take a look at how its design may be calling back to Elden Ring. Throughout the fight, Maris will spawn these blue spirit polyps and jellyfish to fight for it, and the jellyfish in particular to be based on the original game's spirit jellyfish summon, going as far as directly borrowing assets from the original model and skeleton. Not only does this resemblance connect this Nightlord to the practice of spirit calling, but it could have even bigger implications for another creature the boss itself resembles, the Elden Beast. They both incorporate the anatomy of aquatic animals, and that starlight glow in the place of where their heads would be could connect them both to life beyond the cosmos. And it was through this unknown space that Maris drifted asleep until, much like the case with Caligo, the onset of night caught its attention, rousing it from its dormant slumber and leading it to become the Nightlord we know this boss as today.
Thank you, Zvoke. That leaves us with only one lesser Nightlord left. A centaur by the name of Fulghor, champion of Nightglow, who served the radiant gods that cloaked themselves in thunder. He was once part of a band of centaur warriors, but at some point Fulghor's own allies betrayed him and severed his arm from behind. As for the reason behind it, it's possible that these warriors' minds were influenced by the night. We've already seen something like this happen before with Morgoth, who ambushes the Nightfarers during the game's tutorial. The dark fog seen clouding his face suggests that his mind was also compromised, which drives him to attack those he normally have no issue with. Fulghor, however, seems to have somehow been able to resist the maddening influence of the night. While he is now one of the Nightlords that the Round Table fights against, the game states that his fervor for the gods he serves still burns within, wielding a sacred form of the night's power. This power can be seen pretty clearly in his actual boss fight, since, on top of his ability to generate radiant holy shockwaves, Fulghor ends up growing a new distorted claw-like arm, granted by the Night to replace the arm he lost to his comrades, proving that Libra isn't the only one who can command such mastery over opposing forces. With the lesser Nightlords defeated and enough traces of night gathered, the Round Table is able to pinpoint the location of the Shape of Night. Even before coming face to face with it, the members of the Round Table have their own theories on their enemy's origins, giving them a loose idea for what they're up against. The Recluse believes that the Nightlord is what became of a living weapon that she once created during a clash of great armies, but the Iron Menial doubts that a single being alone could reach the level of power wielded by the Shape of Night. The only way to see the final boss's true nature, of course, is to meet it in battle, and upon arriving at his arena, it's apparent that we're not the first ones to challenge the primordial Nightlord here. Two of his arms are pinned to his torso, and his entire body is wrapped in bindings engraved with a pattern that the Iron Menial recognizes but never explains. If a previous group of Nightfarers faced this boss in the past, then they must have failed to destroy him, instead choosing to bind his powers to the best of their ability. This makes the first phase of the boss fight pretty simple, with the Shape of Night only being able to attack using his one free arm. While the boss does manage to free his arms in the earlier phases of the fight, his real power isn't revealed until his first health bar is fully depleted. The bindings fade away to reveal the man known as Heolstor, the Nightlord. Long ago, this man was a knight who challenged a hero that left the country in ruin, but he too was no match. He fell, just another body in a great pile, but eventually he awoke, crawling out from underneath the others. Though he had failed to protect anything or anyone, he yet lived, and so he cursed the world. In one of Elden Ring's endings, the player takes this role, receives the Darkmoon Greatsword, and ushers in an Age of Stars. As it turns out, there was once a race of people known as the Nox who were banished underground long ago. They believed that one day, an Age of Stars will be heralded by the one known as the Lord of Night. With all of this in mind, is it possible that Heolstor is exactly what the Nox have been waiting for? If so, that opens up an entire debate regarding the onset of night and whether or not it's really that bad, especially considering all of the discourse around Ranni's Age of Stars. Unfortunately, that's beyond the scope of this video, so let's finish things out by destroying the source of the night once and for all. With Heolstor defeated, we gain the primordial Nightlord's rune, complete the ritual set in place by the earliest members of the Round Table, and finally bring an end to the Night's reign. The Nightfarers are released from the Round Table, and both the lands between and Erdtree are restored as if the night never happened. Whether this implies the restoration of the original Elden Ring timeline or suggests the existence of an entirely new canon is up to you. But regardless of what you believe, hopefully tomorrow's DLC will help shed some light on the night.